Let's bother with the Bikeriders because that's out this week. Last week we spoke to Jeff Nichols. We talked a lot about the poster and about how gorgeous everybody is. I don't think it's the movie a lot of people will be expecting. Once if they look at the poster, they might be thinking one thing. Anyway, tell us about Bikeriders.
Well, tell me this: what do you think they might be expecting from the poster?
I think they might be expecting more of a kind of a gang,
right?
Warring gangs. In love with their motorbikes, and the thing is, they're not really a gang. They're kind of they're a team, really. Yeah. They're a club, and anyway, it still is lots. There's lots of biking, and there's lots of gorgeous people, and there's a little bit of stabby.
Yeah. Okay. So, new film from Jeff Nichols, who was the guest on last week's show. You did a great interview with him. Shotgun Stories, Mud, Take Shelter, loving. And if you haven't listened to that interview yet, go back and listen to it because it's great. It really, really sets the film up. It's a project that he's been developing for a couple of decades. It's based on a book, which is photos from the mid-'60s of Chicago outlaws. Danny Lyon, who's played in the film by Mike Facer, who's sort of, you said he's not quite a narrator, but he's an interrogator. So essentially what it is it's a film based on a book of photographs for which the text was interviews with some of the subjects of the photograph. So it's not like Hunter Thompson's Hell's Angels, which is, much more a kind of a really deep dive into that stuff. In fact, in the world that's explored in Lyon's book, they're not, you said, they're not really a gang. They're a motorcycle club who then later on go on to become something different. I mean, the story of the film spans from 1959 to 1973, but it jumps around. And we see the central character of the journalist interviewing Jodie Comer's Kathy, who's recounting her time with the Vandals, who are this motorcycle chapter set up by Tom Hardy's Johnny. And she's then having a relationship with Benny, played by Austin Butler. And the film follows the rise of the gang from sort of a beer-drinking motorcycle club, like a social club, really, into something that is then taken over by a new generation who come in and make it something completely different.
Tom Hardy's voice is so that's Tom Hardy and Austin Butler. But we did talk a lot about accents actually in the interview, so do go back and listen to that.
Well, what the director says, of course, is that what Tom Hardy is doing is Brando in The Wild One, because on what we see is his character, who's in fact this kind of family man. He's got a job, he's got a wife, he's a truck driver, but he's watching television and he watches The Wild One and he sees Brando do the thing about, what are you rebelling against? What do you got? And then he's essentially doing an impression of Brando. Meanwhile, Austin Butler is doing an impression of James Dean. And so they're the sort of central things. And one of the things that the film is about is that these people are inspired by pop culture mythology more than they are inspired by actually, the biker gang thing. And I think you have to understand that that's really what it's about. It's a love story with the third part, and perhaps the most important part, being Kathy, Jodie Comer. And she's the person who sort of narrates and leads us through the story as she is interrogated by the photojournalist. There was what Jeff Nichols said, this thing about the Tom Hardy character is an imposter. He's somebody playing a part, playing a role, playing Brando. And the whole film is about people playing roles. And when you said, I don't think it's going to be the kind of film that perhaps people who see the poster think it might be, here's what it is, okay? The film has something of the sort of leatherware feel of Cruising, William Friedkin's film from 1980, which is a very controversial movie. But one of the things that it gets absolutely right is the sound and the crunch of the leather. It's a very tactile film. But the greatest there is to Kathy Bigelow's The Loveless, which is the feature that she co-directed before she made Near Dark. And The Loveless, you asked the director whether or not he'd ever thought about doing this in black and white. And he said, no, the color is important. Interesting thing about The Loveless, similarly, doesn't have much of a plot. It's really all to do with, it's almost like a kind of photo montage made into a film. The Loveless, for years, toured on the late night double bill circuit with Eraserhead, David Lynch's Eraserhead, which is in black and white. And I think that there is something about that period that makes it sit well with with that monochrome. But I think the film had to be in color. But I also think that if you know The Loveless, you'll know it's not a multiplex movie. It is a late night, 11 o'clock at the Phoenix or 1 o'clock at the Scala movie. And I think that what's going to happen with this is if people go having seen the poster, maybe even seen the trailer and thought, okay, it's going to be, it's action and fighting. I mean, there is a certain amount of fighting. They're not going to get that. The touchstone is, if you've seen Catherine Bigelow's The Loveless, this is the kind of, the twin movie to that. It's all about atmosphere. It's all about period. It's all about setting. Jodie Comer is brilliant. And I mean, she's got a lot of talking to do, and she does it in a way that's really kinetic and really keeps things moving. And her narration, I mean, I know it's not quite technically narration, is the most sort of forward moving part of the film. You mentioned yourself that there's a shot in it when you're first introduced to Austin Butler and the camera kind of creeps up from behind. He's about to get a beating because he won't take his colors off. And then you see his face and it's Austin Butler and you go, yeah, he's got charisma and then some. And the way in which he looks and the way in which he looks alongside Tom Hardy and the way in which they talk to each other without really, I mean, Austin Butler's got very little to say. I mean, very, very little to say. So it's a film of mood, it's a film of atmosphere. As I said, it's the leather feel of cruising. It's absolutely the ambience of Loveless. It is not a, Hell's Angels on wheels. It's not
the Warriors.
It's not no. It is not the Warriors. Absolutely. If you're thinking of Scala classics to compare this to, it's not the Warriors, it's the Loveless. Now, for me, that's a good thing. I don't know what everyone else will make of it, because I think that although this might not do very well at the box office now, I can imagine in 5 years' time it would be a kind of late night classic.